The sky above the alien forest was dark and red. Clouds moved slowly, glowing with fire and smoke. Corporal Jack Taylor walked carefully between tall, twisted trees. His boots made no sound on the soft black ground. His gun was ready, held tight. In both hands, he was alone. His squad had gone missing 2 hours ago. One moment they were walking together, the next, there was screaming. Static on the radio, and then silence. Now, the only thing Jack could hear was the wind. It whistled through the trees like something whispering. Every sound made his heart beat faster. He had fought aliens before, but nothing felt like this. This forest felt alive and angry, suddenly. A rustle came from his left. Jack turned quickly. Gun aimed. Finger on the trigger. Nothing. Then another sound. Behind him, closer. He spun around again, breathing fast. Stay calm, he told himself. You're trained for this. But something didn't feel right. The air was thick, like the forest was holding its breath. He moved forward slowly, eyes wide. Then he saw movement, something big, something fast, running between trees, too fast to see clearly. Show yourself. Jack shouted. No answer, just the sound of heavy breathing nearby. He took another step, then, suddenly, it jumped at him, huge, dark, and growling. Jack didn't think. He fired 3 times. Bang, bang, bang. The body hit the ground hard. Rolling over dry leaves, silence returned, thick and heavy. Smoke from the gun floated in the air. Jack's hands shook a little. He moved forward, slowly, carefully. The body was curled up, not moving. His flashlight shook as he pointed it at the figure. Then he saw her, not a beast, not a monster, but a girl. Her skin was pale blue, glowing slightly in the dark. Her hair was silver, long and tangled. Her eyes opened slowly, bright and strange. Full of light, she looked young, maybe 16. She was bleeding from the shoulder. The blood was not red, was golden, shining like liquid sunlight. Jack stepped back in shock. His heart pounded harder than ever. He had never seen anything like her. She looked human, but not from Earth. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, gentle, and perfect English. Why did you hurt me? She whispered. Her eyes locked on his, full of sadness, not anger. Jack opened his mouth but said nothing. His mind was spinning. He had thought it was an animal, a threat. But this was something else. I thought you were going to kill me, he said. Almost in a whisper. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked up at the sky. Then back at him. They will come. Now, she said, who will come? Jack asked, confused and afraid. She didn't respond. Her eyes began to close slowly. Jack knelt beside her, checking her wound. It was deep, but she was still alive. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't leave her here. He couldn't call for help. The radio was still dead. And worst of all, he didn't know who or what was watching him. Suddenly, the wind changed. It carried a strange smell like burning metal and flowers. Jack stood up, gun ready again. The trees began to shake softly. Far away, he heard deep, echoing sounds like drums. The girl opened her eyes again and said, you must not let them find me. Jack looked around, but there was no one yet. Still, he felt that something was coming. Something ancient, something angry. He looked back at the girl. Her breathing was slow but steady. He didn't understand what was happening, but one thing was clear. He couldn't leave her here. He had started this, and now he had to see it through. He lifted her gently into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. As he turned to move, he whispered to himself. What have I done? Behind him, the forest began to glow. Faint lights moving like eyes, watching the wind carried. Voices too quiet to understand. Jack walked into the darkness, holding the alien girl. Not knowing what was waiting ahead, but knowing this was just the beginning. Jack moved through the forest, carrying the strange girl in his arms. Each step felt heavier, not just because of her, but because of the silence. It wasn't normal. Silence. It felt like the trees were listening, like the forest had 1,000 invisible eyes. He found a small cave between thick roots of an old tree. The entrance was hidden by hanging vines and blue moss. Inside, it was dry, warm, and quiet. He placed the girl gently on the ground, using his jacket as a pillow. Her golden blood had stopped flowing, but her skin was cold. Jack checked her pulse. Still there, slow and steady. He sat beside her, breathing hard, trying to understand what had just happened. I shot her, he whispered to himself. She's not human, but she's not an enemy. He stared at her face. She looked peaceful, almost like she was dreaming. But then her eyes opened. Jack jumped back, startled. The girl didn't move, just looked at him with glowing eyes. She blinked slowly, then spoke. You brought me here. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Jack nodded, still unsure how to talk to her. I thought you were ... Something else, he said. I'm sorry. She looked up at the roof of the cave, her voice soft and calm. The forest is angry, she said. It knows what you did. Jack frowned. What is this place, he asked. Where am I? The girl sat up with effort, wincing in pain. She looked at Jack with eyes full of both kindness and warning. This is the Heartwood, she said. A place your kind were never meant to find. Jack didn't answer. He had never heard of Heartwood. His mission brief said this planet was empty, just wild terrain and energy readings. They were here to set up a base, not fight creatures. But now, everything felt wrong. The girl looked outside the cave, then back at him. They will come, she said again. Jack asked quickly, who are they? Who's coming? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the pouch at her side. Her hand shook slightly, but she pulled out a small glass-like stone. She held it out to Jack. He took it carefully. The stone felt warm, like it had its own heartbeat. Inside, tiny lights swirled like stars. What is this? Jack asked. It shows truth, she said. If you know how to look. Suddenly a sound echoed outside. A sharp clicking noise, followed by a low growl. The girl's eyes widened. They're here, she whispered. We must not be seen. Jack turned off his flashlight, pulled his gun closer, and moved to the cave entrance. He peeked out, heart pounding. Something was moving in the trees. Tall, thin shadows walked between the trunks. Their bodies were smooth, black like obsidian. Their heads turned slowly, with no eyes, but they seemed to sense everything. What are those? Jack whispered. The girl pulled him back inside. They are the Watchers, she said. They protect the balance. From what? Jack asked. From you, she said softly. The Watchers moved past the cave, silent and terrifying. Jack didn't move, barely breathed. The girl closed her eyes and whispered something in a strange language. The stone in Jack's hand glowed slightly. The shadows paused, then slowly moved on, disappearing into the fog. Jack sat down, confused and shaken. They didn't see us. They saw, she said. They chose not to act for now. Jack looked at her, more curious than ever. What's your name? He asked. She looked at him with sad eyes. Lyra, she replied. I'm Jack, he said. There was a long pause. Lyra closed her eyes again, as if thinking deeply. Finally, she said, you are not the first human to shoot at me. Jack blinked, surprised. There were others. Lyra nodded. Many, long ago, before the war began. He leaned forward. You mean we've been here before? She nodded again. Your kind came with fire and machines. They woke the forest, and then they ran, leaving behind damage and silence. Jack felt a chill. He didn't know what to believe anymore. His orders, his mission, the history, what if it was all wrong. Lyra pointed at the glowing stone in his hand. "It will show you what was lost," she said, "but only if your heart wants to see." He looked down at the stone. Tiny lights danced inside it. Forming shapes, he saw flashes, flames, machines, screaming forests, a figure that looked like him, standing in fire. Then everything went dark. Jack gasped, his hand shaking. Lyra watched him closely. "You carry more than a gun, Jack," she said. "You carry a choice." Before he could speak again, a deep, echoing cry rolled through the trees. Lyra's eyes widened. "They are not watchers," she said. "They are something worse." Jack grabbed his gun, looked at her, and asked, "What do we do now?" Lyra looked straight into his eyes. "We run." The ground trembled as Jack and Lyra ran through the forest. Their footsteps were quiet, but the sound behind them was not. A low, deep growl rolled through the trees, like something old waking up. Branches shook, and strange lights blinked far. In the distance, whatever was coming, it wasn't friendly. Jack didn't ask questions. He just followed Lyra. She moved fast, even with her wound, like she knew every route, every shadow, every hidden path. "This way," she said, pulling him toward a small hill covered in glowing leaves. There was no cave, no opening, only a giant tree with silver bark. Jack opened his mouth to speak, but Lyra touched the trunk. The bark rippled like water, and a hole opened slowly. They stepped inside, and the entrance sealed behind them. The space inside was wide and quiet. Soft green light glowed from the walls, and the air smelled like rain and stone. Jack leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "What were those things?" he asked. "They're not watchers." "No," Lyra said. "They are called the Hallowed. They are what's left of those who ignored the forest." Jack looked confused. "You mean people?" She nodded slowly. "Not just people," she said, "but creatures, invaders, even guardians like me. When someone breaks the balance, the forest gives a choice: change or become one of the Hallowed." Jack stared at her. "Oh, so they were punished." "They were warned," she replied, "and they didn't listen." Silence filled the space again. Jack looked around, still amazed by the inside of the tree. "Where are we?" "This is a safe route," Lyra said, "a living part of the heartwood. It hides us from things that should not see." Jack sat down, resting his back. His muscles ached, his mind felt heavy. He had trained for battle, for enemies, for survival. But not for this. Not for forests that whispered, or trees that opened like doors. Lyra sat across from him, her eyes watching carefully. "You want to understand," she said. Jack nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." She held out her hand. "The stone," she said. Jack gave it to her, and she placed it between them. It floated in the air, spinning gently. "Close your eyes," she whispered. Jack hesitated, then obeyed. The moment his eyes closed, the air changed. He was no longer inside the tree. He was floating in a memory. He saw Earth ships landing on the planet, metal feet, crushing soft green plants, flames from engines burning tree roots. Then he saw the Watchers calm, silent, trying to warn, but the humans built faster, dug deeper. Then came the first Hallowed. Creatures with empty eyes and twisting shadows. Born not from evil, but from broken trust. He saw Lyra standing in front of a machine, holding her arms out, asking them to stop. But a soldier fired, the same way Jack had. The vision ended. Jack opened his eyes, sweating, his chest tight. The stone fell gently into his hand. Now dim, he looked at Lyra. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I thought we were just exploring." She said nothing, but her eyes softened. "Just a little. Do you still think I was a beast?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "No," he said. "You were the first living thing to ask me a question instead of trying to kill me." A silence settled between them, calm but heavy. Then, the tree shook. Not from the hollow, this was something deeper. What was that? Jack asked, standing up quickly. Lyra stood too, pale and focused. They're trying to root us out. She said, this place is strong, but not forever. Jack checked. His weapon. He had one clip left. Not enough if they were surrounded again. Lyra touched the wall of the tree. It opened a small window. Jack looked out and saw the forest glowing purple. Dozens of hollowed moved like shadows, and behind them came a figure taller than all. It had no face, no arms, just a body made of smoke and light. What is that? Jack whispered. Lyra's voice was low. It is called the Echo. It speaks with the voices of those we've lost. As they watched, the Echo lifted its head. A sound came from a mix of screaming, crying, and whispering. Jack heard his own voice in it, a recording from years ago, calling out to a fallen teammate. His blood ran cold. How does it know me? The forest remembers everything. Lyra said, even your regrets. Jack clenched his fists. This is my fault, he said. Lyra nodded. Yes, but you are still breathing. The Echo turned. Toward them, even from far away, Jack felt its pull, like it wanted him to walk outside and give up. Lyra touched his shoulder. You still have a choice, she said. You can fight it, or you can become part of it. Jack looked at the glowing forest, then back at Lyra. I'm not done yet, he said. Let's find another way. The forest was changing. It was no longer just a place of trees and shadows. It was alive, shifting, watching every move. Jack made, as he and Lyra moved deeper into the heartwood. The air grew heavy, not with smoke, but with memories. Jack felt like he had walked into a dream. The trees bent toward him, whispering in a language he couldn't understand. The leaves above them glowed like stars, but the path ahead was made of black stone, cracked and warm. Lyra stopped suddenly and turned to Jack. We're here, she said. Jack looked around, confused. There's nothing here. He said, just more forest. Lyra stepped forward and knelt on the ground. She placed the glowing stone from before into the soil. The ground pulsed like a heartbeat. Then, slowly, a wide circle appeared carved into the earth. Symbols glowed along its edges, ancient and bright. This is the trial circle, Lyra said quietly. You must enter alone. Jack's eyes narrowed. What kind of trial? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at him with eyes full of sadness. It will show you who you are. Jack didn't like the sound of that, but he stepped forward anyway. He had come this far. He couldn't turn back now. The moment he stepped into the circle, the world around him vanished. No trees, no sky, no Lyra, just darkness and a cold. Wind blowing from nowhere, then light. He was standing in a burned field. Ashes filled the air like falling snow, and in front of him stood a younger version of himself, wearing the same armor, holding the same gun. The younger Jack raised his weapon. He fired at something moving in the grass. Jack turned to see a child, not more than 10, with alien skin and wide eyes. The child fell. Silent, Jack shouted, "Stop!" But the younger version didn't hear. He kept firing again and again. Jack ran toward him, but his feet felt like stone. The more he moved, the slower he became. He was forced to watch every second. Then everything changed again. He was in a metal hallway, fire alarms blaring. He saw himself dragging a wounded soldier, his best friend. Mike was screaming. Don't leave me, but the door ahead was closing. Smoke was thick, and Jack let go. He ran. The door closed behind him. Mike's voice stopped. Jack fell to his knees. I tried to save him, he said to the air. A voice replied. Not Lyra's, not his own. But you ran. The ground broke open beneath him. He fell into darkness again. This time, there was no vision, only voices. Some were human, some were alien, some cried, some cursed his name. They echoed through his bones. Until he couldn't take it anymore, he shouted, "I know I failed. I was afraid. I made mistakes." The voices stopped. Silence. Then a small light appeared. It floated toward him. Inside the light, he saw Lyra's face. Not angry, not sad, just waiting. Jack reached out. The light touched his fingers, and the world snapped back. He was lying inside the trial circle. The forest was quiet again. Lyra stood nearby, watching you past, she said softly. Jack sat up slowly. "I didn't win anything," he said. Lyra shook her head. It wasn't about winning. It was about seeing. Jack looked around. The trees no longer whispered. The air felt lighter, but something inside him had changed. He understood now this war wasn't about weapons or orders. It was about what people chose to see and what they chose to ignore. He stood up and faced Lyra. "I'm ready," he said. "To do what?" she asked. "To fix what we broke," Lyra smiled for the first time, a small, quiet smile. "Then follow me," she said. "There's more you need to see." They walked away from the circle. Behind them, the symbols faded. The forest was still watching, but it no longer felt angry. Now it felt like it was waiting for the next choice. And for the first time, Jack felt like he knew who he really was. Not a soldier, not a hero, just a man trying to make something right. The wind was quiet as Jack followed Lyra through the glowing trees. The ground beneath them was soft, covered with silver moss. The forest no longer felt like a threat, but Jack knew that peace here was fragile. One wrong move, and it could all turn against them again. He glanced at Lyra. She walked without fear. Her hands moving across leaves and branches, they responded to her touch, opening paths that were invisible before. Jack finally asked, "Where are we going?" Lyra replied without looking back. "To the memory garden. It's where the first humans left their mark." Jack stopped, surprised. "The first humans?" He said, "You mean we've been here before?" Lyra turned to face him, her eyes glowing softly. "Yes," she said. "Not just explorers, not just soldiers. Your kind was here long ago." Jack felt cold all of a sudden. He thought his mission was to explore a new world, to prepare for a colony. But this wasn't a new world. It was an old one, and Earth had already touched it as they continued walking. The trees began to thin out. A wide field appeared, covered in strange flowers. Each flower glowed faintly, like stars trapped in petals. In the center stood a broken machine, half buried in the ground. It was rusted, covered in vines, but Jack recognized the shape. It was human-made. A large satellite dish pointed at the sky. Cracked and silent, its control box was open, wires torn and melted. Jack walked up to it and placed a hand on the cold metal. "I've seen these before," he said. "They were used for long-range signals." Lyra nodded. "This one tried to warn Earth," she said, "but no one listened." Jack turned to her. "What do you mean? Who tried to warn us?" Lyra raised her hand, and the flowers around them began to hum. Soft voices filled the air, not words but memories. Jack saw images in the petals. Humans working beside aliens, building something together, sharing tools, sharing knowledge. Then fire, guns, explosions. Fear spread like poison. And one by one, the flowers dimmed, the peace was broken, and the alliance forgotten. Jack stepped back, shaken. "We were friends," he said. Lyra nodded slowly. For a time, Jack clenched his fists. "But why didn't anyone on Earth tell us? Why did they erase all of this?" Lyra looked up at the sky. "Because it was easier to forget," she said. "Easier to pretend." It never happened than to face the shame. The wind picked up again. This time, it brought a sharp scent, smoke and ash. Jack turned quickly, eyes scanning the trees. Something was burning. Lyra stepped closer to him. "They're moving faster." "Now," she said. "They can feel your presence here." Jack raised his gun. "But I haven't done anything wrong this time." "It doesn't matter," she replied. "You carry the blood of those who came before." Suddenly, a voice cracked through the air human. Loud and cold. "Corporal Jack Taylor, respond." Jack froze. "That was Earth Command," the voice continued. "We have detected your signal. Report status immediately." He pulled out his comlink. It was glowing red. Somehow, the broken satellite had sent a trace. He hadn't meant to activate anything but. "It had happened. Should I answer?" he asked Lyra. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she whispered, "If you tell them I'm here, they'll come with fire again." Jack stared at the comm. He could hear static and other voices in the background. Command was close, maybe even landing soon. He shut the device off. "No," he said. "They'll only destroy what they don't understand." Lyra gave a slow nod. "You still have time," she said, but not much. She walked toward the center of the garden and knelt from the soil. She pulled out a small wooden box. It had carvings all over its strange symbols, glowing with soft green light. "This is the last seed," she said. Jack stepped closer. "What does it do?" Lyra looked at him with steady eyes. "It restores what was lost," she said, "but only if planted by someone who chooses peace." Jack reached out, touching the box. It felt alive, like it was breathing. He could sense something inside it waiting, before he could say anything else. The sky cracked with thunder. Flashing lights broke through the clouds. Dropships, Earth. Soldiers were arriving. Lyra turned to him one last time. "You must decide," she said. "Protect this place or watch it fall again." Jack gripped the seed box tightly. Above them, the engines of war roared. Below, the forest whispered. And in his heart, a choice began to bloom. The sky thundered as Earth's dropships broke through the clouds. Their engines roared like metal beasts, shaking the trees below. Leaves flew in every direction, and animals ran for cover. Jack stood in the middle of the glowing field, holding the seed box. Lyra stood beside him, her silver hair moving in the wind. "You need to go," she said quietly. Jack didn't move. "They'll kill you," she added. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "not again." In the distance, metal legs hit the ground, loud and sharp. Earth soldiers spread through the trees in formation. They wore black armor, faces hidden behind helmets, guns ready, voices cold. A voice shouted through a speaker. "Corporal Jack Taylor, drop your weapon and step away from the alien." Jack raised both hands slowly, keeping the seed box close to his chest. "I'm not your enemy," he shouted back. "There's something here you don't understand." The soldiers kept coming, guns pointed, fingers ready to fire. From behind them, a commander stepped forward. Captain Reeves, Jack's old unit leader, hard-eyed, no nonsense, and loyal to orders. "You've gone rogue, Taylor," Reeves shouted. "Step away, now." Jack looked at Lyra, then back at the soldiers. He could feel the forest watching again. Not angry this time, just waiting. "There was life here before us," Jack said. "We were not the first, and we made mistakes. She's not our enemy." Reeves narrowed his eyes. "She's an alien," he said, "and your job was recon, not diplomacy." Jack took a step forward. "She showed me the truth," he said. "We started this war without knowing the story." The other soldiers looked at each other, confused, unsure. They had trained to shoot, not to listen, and now their target was one of their own. Lyra stood still, her eyes glowing. The forest seemed to hum beneath her feet. She said nothing, just watched, waiting for Jack's choice. Reeves raised his rifle. "This is your last warning," he said. "You're choosing her over your people." Jack slowly knelt down and opened the seed box. Inside was a small crystal, glowing softly like a living heart. He held it up. "This can restore everything," he said. Not just for them, but for us. 2. Reeves gave the signal. 3 soldiers stepped forward. Guns raised. Jack didn't move. Then, bang, a shot. Fired. Lyra screamed. Jack looked beside him, blood on her shoulder again. No, he shouted. He stood up quickly, shielding her with his body. The crystal in his hand began to glow brighter, stronger. It pulsed with heat and light. The ground shook. Roots rose from the earth, wrapping around trees. Boots, weapons, the soldiers yelled, trying to back away, but the forest had made its decision. You fired first, Jack said. Just like before, Reeves stared at him, stunned, then barked another order. Take him down. Jack closed his eyes and pressed the seed into the ground. The moment it touched the soil, the world changed. Light exploded from the ground. Not fire life. Green vines shot into the air. Twisting and dancing, flowers bloomed instantly. Filling the field with color and warmth, the wind changed, sweet and clean. The soldiers stopped moving, frozen. Even Reeves lowered his gun. The forest had come alive not to destroy, but to speak. The light touched every soldier. Visions poured. Into their minds, memories not their own. The past, the peace, the betrayal, and the warning. Jack stepped back. Watching the crystal melt into the soil, Lyra touched her wound, healing slowly. You chose well, she said. The forest calmed again. The wind whispered like a song. The vines unwrapped from the soldiers' boots. They stood silently, no longer. Sure of who the enemy was, Captain Reeves stared at the ground. Then at Jack. What happens now? He asked. Jack looked at the glowing trees. We listen, he said, for once. We listen instead of taking. Lyra stepped beside him. You planted more than a seed. She said, you planted trust. A soft light rose from the spot where the crystal had been. It floated upward into the sky. A signal not of war, but of peace. And somewhere far beyond the stars, someone was watching. The light from the seed rose higher into the sky. It passed through the clouds like a silent comet, all around Jack and Lyra. The forest glowed with soft color. The vines no longer reached in anger. Now they moved with grace, like dancers in the wind. The Earth soldiers stood still, watching everything. None of them raised their weapons. Their faces, once hidden behind helmets, were now filled with wonder. Captain Reeves stepped forward slowly, his voice quiet. What did you do? He asked. Jack looked up, his eyes reflecting the rising light. I chose to stop being afraid, he said. I chose to plant peace. Reeves glanced around the forest. The energy was different now. The ground felt alive, but not in a dangerous way. It felt calm, old, sacred. Lyra placed a hand on a nearby tree. The bark responded by opening a small pattern, an ancient symbol. The forest remembers trust, she said. It grows strongest where fear dies. Suddenly, a loud hum echoed through the sky. The Earth ships above began to power down. Their engines cooled, weapons locked, lights dimmed. Something in the air was changing their systems from Jack's belt. His communicator crackled again. He picked it up slowly. Command to ground him, a voice said. We lost full control of dropship systems. What's happening down there? Jack didn't answer right away. He looked at the other soldiers. Some were kneeling beside the new plants growing from the seed's energy. Others stared at their weapons, unsure what to do with them now. He pressed the button and spoke clearly. We found something older than war, he said. We found life worth protecting. Static filled the line, then silence. Jack shut the device off and placed it on the ground. He didn't need it anymore. Lyra stepped closer and looked toward the sky. The signal reached beyond Earth, she said. Jack turned to her. What do you mean? The seed isn't just a gift, she replied. It's a message to those who came before and to those who still watch. Jack's eyes widened. You're saying? Someone else is coming. Lyra nodded slowly. They were here long before your kind, she said. They left when the forest was hurt, but now they will see the balance returning in the distance. A deep rumble echoed through the trees, but it was not thunder. It was calm, smooth, like the sound of a mountain waking up. From the edge of the forest, the sky began to change. Shapes moved across the stars, huge and slow. Not ships, not machines, something different. The trees leaned toward the sound. Animals came out of hiding, standing still, listening. Even the wind waited. Lyra turned to Jack again. They are the witnesses, she said. They judge the worlds that forget harmony. Jack felt a chill. Will they destroy us? He asked. Lyra shook her head. No, she said. They will wait and watch. And what happens next will depend on what you do next. Reeve stepped beside them, his voice low. If this is real, if we've really done all this damage, then maybe it's time. We stop pretending we're always the good guys. Jack gave a small smile. That's the first step, he said, knowing we have a lot to fix. Lyra walked into the center of the field. She raised both hands, and the vines grew taller. Around her? Then they parted, revealing a new path, a road made of light and green stone. Leading deeper into the forest, this is where I leave you, she said. My part is done. Jack stepped forward. You're not coming with us, she shook her head. I belong to the forest, she said. You belong to the stars. Jack didn't want to say goodbye. He owed her everything, his life, his change, his understanding, but he knew she was right. He bowed his head. Thank you, Lyra. She smiled gently. Thank you for listening, she said. Most don't. The light around her grew brighter, and with one final breath, she vanished into the roots. Gone, but not lost. Jack turned to the soldiers. They looked at him, waiting for orders, but he didn't give commands. He pointed toward the path Lyra had opened. We don't go back the same way we came, he said. We move forward with respect. And so they walked the road of green stone, leaving behind their fear, leaving behind the weapons of old. The forest watched them go, not as enemies, but as guests. Above them, the witnesses circled the stars. Not in judgment, but in hope, because one man made a choice, not to fight, not to run, but to understand. And that was how peace began. Not with silence, not with surrender, but with a whisper and a seed planted in trust.